Hello, everybody. Oh, hi, Danny. Lovely to see you. You didn't get a notification of my last live. Hi, Danny. Oops. I had a little bit of playback then. A lot of people don't get notifications, but I don't get notifications for a lot of people either. I sometimes get some for your lives. Sometimes I get them for BAM, sometimes I don't. So yeah, I don't know what's going on at the moment with everything, but how are you? And I hope that you're very well. Tonight's live, we're going to be discussing there's been a Viking boat discovered in a part of northwest England called the Wirral. You may have heard of it, you may not have. It's not far from Liverpool. And it was quite a Viking stronghold, shall we say, 1,000 years ago. So, yeah, it's quite exciting. Hi, Janet. How are you? Great to see you. I'm glad you've made this one. And also we have started getting for the first. Well, we had trolls a couple of months ago, which were had come in from Chuffer's channel. Well, when we went live on Friday night, we were getting trolled. Now, initially, I let the people, they came in with insults, and I was happy to let them stay in if they wanted to try and have a dialogue, but they didn't. So we ended up blocking them. They were just being disruptive. So I'm not giving them the time of day. So if anybody comes in with the usual names or what have you, or try to disrupt the chat, can you just put them out? Don't bother interacting with them. Hi, Brian in sunny Southerners. It's been beautiful here today as well. Danny, Brian's in my favourite place. Well, one of my favourite places. Brian has a holiday home in the same village that I went to the other week for my little holiday. You went to the Viking Museum in Roskilde in Denmark. The ship was amazing, though smaller than I thought it would be years ago. Yeah, the Viking Ship Museum in Oslo in Norway as well. That's really good. Oh gosh, sorry. I flipping dropped my tablet. I don't know what the heck is up with this tablet. It just keeps freezing up. Yeah, the Oseberg boat is there in the Oslo Viking ship museum. So that's really interesting thing to see. But yeah, I'll talk about that as well. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the Viking discovery and Viking boats in general, really, because it's quite fascinating, and where they were on the Wirral. And then I've got a little dogman story as well. So hopefully, hopefully everybody will like that one. I'm going to watch the chat again in a second. I'm just trying to get my my stupid flipping heck. Sorry, you're going to have to listen to me swearing at my tablet. Right. Sorted. Okay. Hopefully now it will stop being silly. Right, let's get back to the chat. Oh, hi, Simples. How are you? No, Brian, I haven't. I'll tell you what, you're a cheeky bugger. Swearing at my age of 103. Who'd thunked it? My plastic surgeon's fabulous. No, I haven't been to the Largs Viking Museum. Hi, Frida. Lovely to see you. I'm hoping that Sid can make it in because I know he likes the Dogmen stories and Green Eyes. Now I know because it's silly o'clock in Australia, so hopefully we'll talk about the Vikings first, and then hopefully by that time when we finished it and we're going on to the Dogman stuff, Green Eyes will be here. How is everybody today? Yeah, Simples. He was saying the other night that she's still in hospital, so it's which is quite sad. But you know, at least he got to have a little holiday, didn't they? So again, Janet, I know you missed it, and Frida kind of came in on the back end of it the other night. Brian, Simples, any of those trolls from Friday come in. I'm not even tolerating them this time. Just kick them out. Let them go back to Chuffer's channel and stay there. She can keep sending her trolls in, but we're not, we're talking about history and interesting stuff. And then we'll do some dogmen stories. I can't be bothered with people who are playing silly buggers on the internet because they've got no lives. Anyway, while you were talking about the logs, the Viking Museum, Brian, have you been to it? Have you been and had a look round? It's lovely seeing everybody in. Now, I also owe Frida, because it was Frida's birthday last week, and because I had all sorts of stuff going on, I've actually missed 3 birthdays. So I missed Lady Witch and Tismy Denny, and then I obviously missed Frida. So hi Marie, why are you not blue? Bloody hell, I swore I had you in blue, Marie. This isn't right. There was also Dolly Mixture. For some reason, her wrench had gone. So, and I did give it back to her. I hadn't removed it. Oh yeah, Frida. When we asked him the other night if she was home or still in hospital. So yeah, she's still there. Right, I'm just going to sort Marie out with her wrench, because we can't be having this. And you see, I've come prepared tonight. I've actually got my tablet charged up, which is a first, because usually I'm not this organised. Look at that. I see. Wondered what the fire brigade was out for. Oh, Gappy birthday. Is that a new one? Right, Marie. Okay. Right, when you type again, Marie, you should be a moderator now. Yeah, there you go. So yes, so I'm going to. Oh, was it Cat? Oh, for God's sake, when was it Cassie's birthday? Oh man. Okay. So for Frida, for Cassius, for Tismy Denny, for Lady Witch. Now I know it's Sid's at the end of this month, isn't it? So hopefully I'll remember to do a video. But so we'll go back again. So for Frida, for Cassius, for Lady Witch, and for Tismy Denny. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Frida, Cassius, Tismy Denny, and Lady Witch. Happy birthday to you. Even though I'm incredibly late, we love you all. You've got 20 quid on that I don't finish any story. I will finish the story, Brian. I do always finish my stories. I just kind of finish them in little bits and pieces, don't I? But I will finish my story tonight. It's not a very long one because I've got work in the morning as well. I'm really tired today, to be fair. It's been a very long day. Sorry, I just had to have a little yawn then. Right. Oh bugger, I forgot to send, oh, flipping heck, I forgot to send Blue Rose a text message to tell her I was coming live. Not to worry, I know she'll catch up with us at some point. So, what time are we on now? 22. Right, I'm going to start with this Viking story because I actually, when Blue Rose brought it up the other night, I didn't know what she was talking about. And when I looked into it, I actually did know about it. Nice proper Italian pizza and a few bottles later. So, have I shared my pizza dough recipe with you, Brian? Because everybody needs it. And in fact, before I start this story, I'm going to share it again. And Danny, if you want to treat your husband to even better than takeaway pizza base, it is so easy. I will share it. Right, get this, Brian, and everybody else who's interested. The easiest recipe ever. And I meant everything for making things easy. When I was given this recipe, I said, no way is this going to work. No chance. Porklet, did it in home. What do they call it now? Oh, I'm going to start a story, Brian, and you can give me that £23 now. Pay it in my account. She was making it in cookery at school. They used to call it home economics. They call it something different now. Right, Frida, you're going to love this one. That's it. Home economics, Janet. But they call it something else. Anyway, she said she was going to make my pizza in there, and her home ec teacher was saying that isn't going to work, and was absolutely astounded that not only did this recipe work without yeast, but it tasted as good as it did. So this makes a very thick 12-inch pizza, or I divide it into two, and it makes two thin 12-inch pizzas, which still aren't that thin. Delicious. Okay, get ready for the really complicated recipe. It is 1 measuring cup. So I use the American measuring cups. I suppose you can use anything really, so long as they're the same measurements or weights, what have you. 1 cup of full fat natural Greek yogurt, and 1.5 cups of self-raising flour. In America, it's called all-purpose flour, but over here in the UK, self-raising flour. So 1.5 cups of self-raising flour and 1 cup of full-fat natural Greek yogurt. And you mix it up with a spoon. It comes together really quickly. The smell of it is amazing. And if it's a bit sticky, if it's, a little bit too tacky, you can sprinkle more flour on it until it starts becoming less tacky. I don't bother rolling it out. You can do, but I finger stretch it. I've got a 12-inch pizza pan, with the perforations underneath it, and I cook them on that. And so you roll it out or stretch it out or force it out, whichever. Janet, it's so easy. It is so easy. I can't even tell you. You stretch it out, bung your toppings on it, stick it in the oven. About 15-20 minutes. I put it on about 180, and I watch it, and 15 minutes or so, because that's in my oven. Done. We have not ordered takeaway pizza in this house for months. Try it. Try it and tell me that I'm telling fibs. It's so easy and it's delish. So yeah, have a go at that one, Janet. That's all it is. And for those in the back, I shall repeat it again. It is 1 cup of full fat. It's got to be full fat natural Greek yogurt, and 1.5 cups of self-raising flour, or if you're in America, all-purpose flour. And that's it. I've no idea how many pancakes it makes, Brian. I just know that it makes 2. You've seen flatbread made like that. Frida, it's delicious. It's so nice. The first time I made it, I used the whole ball of dough to make 1 12-inch pizza for Porky. It was too fat. Well, you all saw it, didn't you? Remember when I posted photographs of it, of my pizzas? So, yeah, we just load the pizzas up. It's delish. It cooks so well. So, yeah, please try it. Let me know how it turns out and what you think of it. But they have said in here that it's just as good, if not better than takeaway pizza. Okay, right. Now I'm going to get on with the story about the Viking ship. We've had our little food interlude. Okie dokie. So when Culborson. Now, who are you, Culborson? Because you've got a wrench, but I don't know the name. It's not Cassius, that is it? By any chance? Well, whoever you are, you've been in before, so welcome, welcome. I know Domino's is incredibly expensive. That's where these two normally get the pizzas from, but no more. Oh, is it creepy? No, it's not. You are the god of feet. Hi, Green Eyes. Hi, Green Eyes. The god of feet. Yeah, you did nearly lose 23 quid. Shut your mouth, because I'm. I don't even know who the god of feet is. Oh, the god. Oh, it's Cassius. I love. I knew if you. It's got to be Cassius with a typo like that. Tell me I'm wrong. No, I think it's Cassius. The thing is, he can't go incognito anywhere because he fucks it up for himself. Right, I'm stopping. I am stopping being distracted. Okay, so the Viking story. Now, the other night, Blue Rose came in. Yeah, that's him. Typing with elbows. It's our Cassius. Hiya, lovely. Right, back to the story. So, Blue Rose came in and asked me, had I seen this story about the Viking ship that had been found in Hoylake? And I said, no. So she sent me a link over for it. Well, I checked it out. I don't know if any of you have seen my community post. I posted, I think it's a 3 or 4 minute video about this that was made in 2007. And when I watched this, I thought, actually, I know about this. It's at a place called Mells on the Wirral, which is spelled Meols. There's also a place called Mells near Southport. And this is the Mells on the Wirral. Now, I thought, because this is the one I already heard about, I thought this had already been excavated and we just hadn't heard anything about it. And when I've looked into it, there's a little bit of a backstory. So I shall give you a little bit of the history on it, and then I'll talk about the archaeologists and so on. So let's go back to 1938, and there was a pub being constructed, or permission had been given for a pub to be constructed in Mells on the Wirral, and it is what is now called the Railway. It's quite a large establishment, so there were a team of builders and navvies and so on working on the site, 1938, and they are rushing. They're on quite a tight schedule to get this pub constructed. And while the labourers are digging for the foundations, just shut up, Brian. Listen, I'll stop. I'll stop now, and then that's 20 quid I've got, isn't it? So while they're digging for the foundations, they suddenly come across it. They kind of dig down, and there is a layer of blue clay. And as they dig through the blue clay, they then uncover a boat. So it's the outline of a boat. It's quite a way down. It's several feet down, and it's still more or less intact. So they shout the gaffer over. Sorry, for people like Danny, that's the we call them the gaffers, the boss of the job, the foreman on the job. Um, Over here we call them the gaffer. So they shout the gaffer, and they're like, look what we found, and there's like a boat and the remains of a boat here, and not wanting to delay the construction because obviously they're running to a tight schedule. The gaffer tells them, cover it up, just we don't want any of these archaeology types coming and delaying us any further, cover it up. So, and what you've got to realise is that at the time, there were a lot of amateur archaeologists and there were a lot of people who were, very interested in. There's a bit of a revival period, especially with what had happened with the Sutton Hoo burial. If any of you have watched that film, The Dig, with Ray Fiennes in it, that's based, and they were, during the war years. There were a lot of people getting into archaeology, and when big finds like Sutton Hoo, that Saxon king's burial was found, I mean, it made international headlines. So I know he's just trying to. He's trying the delaying tactics, Frida, the little bugger. He's already lost. Well, the 23 quid I don't get because I've actually started. I know, Janet, but I mean, this is what happened. And it's not just then, it still happens today. There are some builders, unscrupulous or, desperate even, who have to get a job finished, within certain timelines, who will fail to advise the county archaeologists that they have found anything significant. The same thing happened with one of my projects, which I know I've told you all about. They actually found a Mesolithic, is it Mesolithic or Neolithic? Mesolithic, I think, settlement. And at that point, they thought that these were nomadic hunter-gatherers. They didn't think that these people actually had any permanent base. So this has completely rewritten what they thought about that time period. And that was on one of my project sites. We got delayed. All work had to stop. So the constraints that we were under, they basically went by the wayside because this was an internationally significant and important find. So I can kind of understand. I mean, I was fascinated because I love history, but and it wasn't my money, but I can understand to a certain degree. I don't forgive it, but I can understand to a certain degree why this was going on, where people would cover up these fantastic finds. So we go back. The gaffer on the job said, cover it up. Not having this job delayed. We're on a very, very tight schedule. So the navvies proceeded to cover this Viking boat up, but not before one of the navvies, a certain Mr. McRae, drew it. And he was a very astute guy. So he drew kind of the general location of where the boat was, a pretty accurate depth, and what he could see of the boat, which was from what I can see on the drawing, it looked like it's the keel. So the front end of the boat sticking out and probably maybe halfway down. Now, obviously he's long left this world, but his son had these drawings and made them available to the local archaeologists. I know, Marie, it was very, very clever of him. It showed great foresight, I think. So sorry, just got distracted. Little dog is fast asleep and he's running in his sleep, so you'll probably hear puppy noises in a minute when he starts doing that little dreamy yell, but his little legs are going like the clappers. So his son made this drawing available to the archaeologists. Now, apparently, it isn't the local archaeologists that are heading up this dig at the moment. It's the University of Nottingham. Hi, Julia. Hello, love. Hope you're well. You're just in time for our little Viking story. So so Mr. McRae's son, and his name's John McRae, when he made this available and he was talking to the archaeologists, and if any of you have watched that little 3-4 minute clip I posted on my community page, he's being interviewed on that. And he said, when they asked him what kind of, did your dad tell you what kind of a boat it was? And he said, yes, I asked my dad, and he said it was a clinker design. Now, if any of you don't know what a clinker designed boat is, they're overlapping boards, so they're watertight, and they're also quite flexible. There's quite a lot of flexibility to these clinker built boats. They're very, very sturdy. A Klingon, and well, we used to call like Klingons and Winnets and clinkers, but not that kind of clinker. So they're these clinker built boats, and when he was asked, are you sure that your dad knew what he was talking about? Well, his dad was a tradesman, and he 100% could guarantee that this, yeah, clinkers hang from your ass. I know, Cassius. That's why I'm saying clinkers, winnets, and tag nuts and dangleberries. My dad says clinkers. It must be a Scottish thing, but anyway, it's a clinker built boat. These are overlapping boards. So he was pretty adamant that this was what it was. So, Denny, did you hear your happy birthday, sweetheart? I don't know if you did. Sorry, we'll just I'll pause for 1 second. Yeah, I had quite a lot going on. I missed 4 birthdays. I missed yours, Cassius's, Frida's, and Lady Witch's. So about 5 minutes ago, I sang a belated happy birthday to all of you. I'm so sorry, but it's lovely to see you. Danny's in here as well, Denny. You'll get me confused, Danny and Denny. But it's lovely to see you, and I hope you're well. I'm going to drop you a text message tomorrow. I did actually say on Friday in my live that I've not spoken to you and I needed to get in touch. So I will drop you a text tomorrow because I've got a bit of news for you. But lovely to see you. So let's crack on back with this. So the archaeologists now have this drawing. And there'd been a lot of local rumours as well for a long time that there was a boat buried in Mells on the Wirral. And it must have been the people who, the guys who were initially digging. Shut up, Brian. The guys who've been digging up the foundations, they've obviously gone home and they've told the friends, they've told the neighbours, they've told the relatives, what have you. So word of mouth, and that's how it's gone. Anyway, you're welcome, Denny, lovely. I'll put you up on screen there. So hopefully if you're listening in, but yes, I will, I'll give you a shout tomorrow, darling, but it's lovely to see you. So they had a little bit of a conflab, and they decided that they wanted, obviously, to try and excavate this pub. Now we're going back 16 years here. So they then made a bid, an HLF bid. So for anyone who doesn't know, that's the Heritage Lottery Fund. Now, these are quite tricky funds to bid for. I know I've done HLF funding bids myself. I've been successful twice for projects, to get additional like external funding to bolster government funding. And they are really in-depth and complicated applications. So they applied to HLF to get some funding to assist with the excavations, and unfortunately they were turned down because, like I said, they are so strict on the criteria, and it did not have enough of a community involvement element to it. So unfortunately they were turned down. And as most people will know, the archaeology departments for the majority of universities in this country are terribly underfunded, and they have to rely on either external funding bids, going to different government departments, maybe trying to work in partnership with with other organisations that have a vested interest in that particular site. You know, it's quite difficult for them. Sometimes they can get construction companies, you know, when they're doing big developments, and they will help to, you know, they will assist the archaeology departments, basically because it's in their own interest. As soon as they can get these sites checked over by the archaeologists, as soon as they can get on with the work. So sometimes they will also fund these digs. You know, they're not going to be out of pocket to do so. So that was a door shut in the face. So it shows how long it's taken for them to A, get some funding together, and B, to come up with alternatives. Because it's 16 years on from that little program being made. Now, what they've had to do is they couldn't get the funding for a full excavation. So they've had to go for a more affordable option. And it's basically they're taking core samples from where they know this boat is, um, and the samples of the wood and the surrounding soil. Now, because this boat is under a layer of blue clay, that is an amazing preservative. It's the same type of ground that preserved the Oseberg boat, which is at the Oslo Viking ship museum. So, you know, a lot of these boats, when they're found and they're in this type of substance, the wood is very, very well preserved. I mean, they found Roman wood in and around the Thames when it's been preserved in this clay. It's sometimes the wood looks near enough new. Not all the time, but sometimes, you know, it's not crumbly, it doesn't disintegrate when it comes into contact with the air. Obviously, over time it will then start to degrade. So they're basically doing some dendro. I was only thinking the other day, I remember the Mary Rose being raised. I went to see that in Portsmouth, Green Eyes, the Mary Rose. But yeah, it's a similar thing, you know. They had the Mary Rose. They've got, I mean, there's been Roman ships found in, was it last year? Was it Mallorca? I think it was Mallorca in Spain, and it was so well preserved that there were hundreds of amphora that looked brand new. That, you know, the jars that they'd store either wine or olive oil, things like that, in them. There was another one, wasn't there? When I lived in Southampton, they were looking for another boat of Henry VIII's on Get Some For Your Wrinkles, that blue clay. So you fucking cheeky bastard. Right, I'm going to put Brian's going on screen for being a cheeky get. I don't have that many wrinkles. I've got wrinkles when I'm tired. I love archaeology. I've lots of books. Yeah. I've got a lot of historical books, but most of mine are Jack the Ripper books. I've got nearly a full shelf of Jack the Ripper books. And then my other favourite, so I've got Jack the Ripper books, Viking books, and cookery books. Send me a bucket of it. You don't need them, Green Eyes. Don't forget, we've all seen you. You're lovely. Um, so yeah, so at the moment, that's where it's standing, this boat dig. They're waiting for you get some for your ball back. Oh my goodness, what you like. Now, some of the stuff that it's not it you know that they're not talking about with this in the papers at the moment, and it has been touched on in that little program, is that, you know, some people are saying, like, you know, what's a boat doing there at Mel's, and could this be a boat burial like the one in the Norway, the Oseberg boat, but it's buried too deep, because when they were boat burials, and we'll go again, look at like Sutton Hoo, look at what happened there. They tended to only bury them maybe a foot 2 feet at the most down, just basically to get the, the keel and the hull of the boat into the ground just to keep it sturdy. They would then place the warriors or whoever's bodies inside with all the burial goods, and then they would either cover the boat and the bodies or bodies with um, stones, and then they would build a mound over the top of it. So this is too deep. I mean, never say never until they've completely excavated it. We're not going to know, but the likelihood is that no, it's not a boat burial. Now, I think most of you remember when I was talking about the Viking boats before, on my previous lives, the fact that these were just these creations, they were amazing. The technology was so advanced at the time because the Vikings were the only people to ever be able to construct these ships that were not only able to withstand crossing the North Sea, the North Sea, the Irish Sea, the Atlantic, as we all know now, you know, um, the Baltic. These boats went everywhere. They went through some of the roughest and most dangerous seas on the planet, but these boats, not only could they do that, they were then also so um, versatile, shall I use that word, that they could still float and travel at speed in only 3 feet of water. And that's how they got so far inland, especially in the UK. Because a lot of our rivers and the tributaries of the main rivers are not that deep. But you've got incidences of Viking longships appearing like right into central England, especially, and in not particularly deep water courses. So the feat of engineering in these boats was astounding. Now, the reckoning, because this boat appears to be quite significantly wider than the Oseberg boat, they're thinking that it was possibly used either, there's two uses, either for fishing or possibly um, for transportation of goods. And I would probably go for the latter because it's between 6 and 9 meters long. And I would say that to me is more of a transportation boat length than a little fishing boat. I mean, maybe a whaling boat, but I wouldn't expect to see a whaling boat on the Wirral. So yeah, they're my thoughts. So I am going to go with a goods boat. Whether it was taking things to or from Scandinavia, the likelihood is, it would probably, maybe transporting grains or plunder back to Norway or Denmark, wherever it, whichever part of Scandinavia it came from. I'm going to say I'm gonna say Denmark. Just out of devilment, I'm gonna go up for Denmark. With it being the Wirral. Excuse me. Or it could have been bringing livestock from Scandinavia over to the settlements here, because the Wirral, as people forget, the Wirral was quite a significant settlement for the Vikings. Um, if you remember, we covered, because it was kind of the bordering in with Mercia, um, one of the kingdoms, one of the Saxon kingdoms. So the Saxon kingdom of Mercia um, had a very close border with um, Viking, well, the Viking northwest of England. You've got Widnes and Runcorn, um, which are the other end of the Mersey. Widnes, there was a promontory, couldn't even say that then, jutting out across the River Mersey at that point, which the Vikings called the Vidness. This is why Widnes got its name. They called it the Vidness, which was the wide nose. Vidnes, wide nose. Because they said it looked like a serpent's nose, looked like a serpent. So, there's been a lot of Viking activity on the Wirral. A lot of place names on the Wirral are of Viking origin. So, Thurlaston, that's one of the names, just that spring into mind. There are tons of Viking names on the Wirral. Um, I've just had a brain fart then. Thingwall, that was the other one. Thingwall, because a thing was a Viking parliament. So they know that for that particular area in on the Wirral, that is where the Vikings from around that area of Cheshire and what's now Merseyside. So we're talking Mercia and that area of the Danelaw that came close to there. That was where the thing was held, Thingwall. It's a pity that Helen Happy Thoughts isn't in here because that's her area, and obviously Blue Rose and yeah, Kathy is from the Wirral, and Bonnie Scott, Linda, she's from the Wirral as well. So let me just catch up with the chat. So what's Janet said? Makes me wonder if the Vikings had help from spacemen like the pyramids, etc., due to the technology. You never know. You never know. I mean, I've said this quite a few times over a lot of this ancient technology. Modern engineers and engineering students, they've tried to replicate some of these, either the boats or look at the trebuchet, for example, the war machines from the Middle Ages. And it took them a long time before they managed to construct a trebuchet um, to be functional. And I think, Brian, you can, and Cassius, you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure, isn't that first working trebuchet at Calaveras Castle near Dumfries? I'm sure it's Calaveras. Anyway, I shall wait until you confirm that. So let me see. Frida said, internet is great, but there's something I still like about flicking through a book. I'm the same, Frida. I don't like Kindles. They're great if, yeah, you can be asked, but I like the feel of a book in my hand and turning the pages. Love the smell of old books, when you go into a library. My dream would be to have a library in, in my house. If I had a big house, great big stately home. You never heard of one. You'll have seen it, Cassius. They'll put like a big rock in it. They had them on like Lord of the Rings, and they swing. There's a counterweight, and the counterweight will swing, and it'll like fling the big stone. You're not Cassius. Oh, well, who are you then? Oh, so you've seen it, Julie. Was I right then, I thought it was Calaveras Castle. But yeah, I remember how long it was taking them to try and reconstruct it because they'd had things like some of the weaponry. They had the Greek fire, didn't they? And if anybody's seen the film The Outlaw King with Chris Pine in it, which is based on Robert the Bruce, it shows there where Edward the First used his trebuchets with Greek fire as the weapon of choice to batter Stirling Castle because he refused to take the surrender. That's it. Like a big catapult. That's the one. The huge, great big wooden things, big counterweight on them. No, I thought Cull Borson was Cassius Frida. Types with elbows, especially because of the typos. I don't know what Cull Borson means though. Does it have a meaning? I shall just wait for that one to catch up. Yes, you'll have to wait on that one, Frida, because I don't know if I thought that was Cassis, but it might not be. But I was convinced. Frida will know who I am. You can't see that name either. Oh, well, if you can't see them, then that's Stan, innit? Cull Borson, C-U-L. Yeah, I'll put it on screen. If Frida can't see you, that means it's Sid. You was out talking to a drunk. What a life you have, Brian. Is it somebody wandering around the campsite? Right, let me have a little look. Yeah, it's our Sid. I thought you gave it away. I was convinced that you were I was convinced that you were Cassius. Absolutely convinced. She has a van here too and drives an electric wheelchair. Who does? What, the drunk? So now that I'm oh, for God's sake. Oh, we've got somebody else now with another one. Yeah, well, right. So I'm with you now. Do you know what? It just didn't twig with me. Culborson. You are right, Janet. It's hang on. It is Odin's brother, isn't it? Culbert, or have I got that wrong? I think it's Odin's brother. Do you know what, Janet? So does mine. It keeps freezing up. Right, let me thought you dressed up as a Viking. Let's have a little look. How's a van here too? Oh, I got that little bit then, didn't I? Balenciaga. They are. Balenciaga is shoes, isn't it? Hang on, who's Brianna? Where have we got Brianna? I can't see Brianna. Oh, is that Brianna? I've got you as Balenciaga because I was going to say it's Balenciaga shoes, isn't it? How the hell did you know that was Brianna? Right. How did he know that was you? That's it. Yeah, that's Brianna Green Eyes, Balenciaga. Very, very nice shoes. Oh, is it magic? Brian's smart. He's got inside information. I think he's sneaky weaky. So, yeah, so basically that's where we are with the Viking find in the Wirral. So as and when I hear anything else, I can let you all know. Yeah, it's great to see you too, Brianna. I can't go in with these flipping with these name changes. Brian goes to Chanel. Oh, do you? um, before I start with I'm actually surprised I even knew that about Balenciaga. But as you all know, I did have my dad bought me a pair of Manolos for my birthday, and I lost one. And I have one Manolo Blahnik shoe, even though, well, as you all know, whenever I go out, I get drunk, I lose a shoe. I can't throw it away, even though I will never be able to prance around in a pair of Manolo Blahniks, but I've got one, and I'm keeping it. You never know, the other one, it might be a homing shoe. And I didn't throw that at anybody, not like me clog story from the other night. I actually got home and woke up with only one shoe, and I've got no idea where it went. I think it fell off in the taxi. Now, I did ring round because I couldn't even remember which flipping taxi firm I'd managed to get a taxi home from with, but I rang round and I never found my shoe. So somewhere there is a Manolo Blahnik shoe that matches mine. I love saying that name. Kiss, have you finished your Viking story? If so, Brian, cough up the dough. Yes, I have. That's why I said I've actually. So that's where we are with that. And if I as and when anything else happens, I can let you all know. But at the moment, waiting on the I can never say it, dendro. Oh, you know what I mean. They're on the dendro data. A very happy one-legged woman somewhere. Well, that's it, Janet, of course. And as you all know, but it'll be probably a very happy, tall, one-legged woman. Yes, the story is finished for me. The actual story of the Viking ship is not. Because we as yet do not have an end to it. No, do you not know, Brian? I have got really big feet. I'm like Sideshow Bob. 5'2", and I've got big feet. I'm like a fucking hobbit, except they're not hairy. But I will not blow over in a strong wind. Yeah, I've got the worst feet ever. No, I don't take a size shoe, Brianna. A size 4. No, 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 no. No, that's wishful thinking. I'm well, some of you may know, but you can have a guess. I'm 5'2". Have a guess what size my feet are. Although they don't look that big, because people usually get quite surprised. I do hide it, but yeah, I know you're only a size 3. Green eyes. Yes, Janet's got it right. I got size 7 feet. No, not a size 9, Brian. I've got UK size 7 flipping feet. I don't know what that is in American sizes. Or that's probably like a size 9 or something in America, but let's have a look. Oh, you've 5. Now, the thing is, Marie, my sister did gorilla's feet measure. Oh God, yeah, you've all got little feet, but yeah, and you're all taller than me. Well, some of you are taller than me. I used to work with a man who was only 5'2". He had size 10 feet. We called him Clown. Feel terrible. And no, my dad calls me Sideshow Bob. And he also used to say, and I never got this as a kid, but they all took the piss out of me. Everybody on both sides of the family. The Irish lot used to say I had feet like slutch boats. That was me nan. I was like, what the fuck is a slutch boat? Oh, good, Janet. We're 7 twins. Yeah, but I bet you're not 5'2". And the thing is, Marie, my sister takes a size 5. She's 5'8". I'm 5'2" with a 7. But yeah, got called Sideshow Bob. Yeah, and my dad saying either he'd say, um, he'd call me Sideshow Bob, or he'd say I got my shoes made at Camel Laird's. Now, Camel Laird's was the shipbuilders on the well over in the Wirral, Liverpool on the Mersey. So he used to say Camel Laird shipbuilders made me shoes. But yeah, my Irish nanny used to say I had feet like slutch boats. I like to think, as I said, I prefer to refer to myself as a hobbit. Got hobbit feet. So that's yeah, so that was our little update on the Viking find in Mells on the Wirral. So I will keep you updated. I'll keep checking the news for it. Was that a spelling mistake there, Brian? Sideshow boob. Your ex is a size 12 UK size and about 6 foot. That's the one. Oh, I love that song. I love that song, Brianna. Ferry cross the Mersey. Jerry and the Pacemakers. It always reminds me, has anybody seen the film Letter to Brezhnev? You're £20 later now, yeah. We'll save that for when I'm up in Southern S. I'll have a couple of pints of heavy in the Paul Jones off you. Oh, do you know what? My friend didn't finish a meal, and I'll give him his due. The landlord knocked it off our bill in there. I had a lasagna. It was delish. My friend had what does she have now? Oh, the mushroom stroganoff. And I will admit, I tasted it, and it wasn't nice. It just tasted like a very watery mushroom soup. Um, so she couldn't eat it when he came round because she literally hadn't touched it. And he said, "Oh, were you full?" And she was like, "No, it was just." She said, "I'm really sorry, but I can't eat it. It was vile." And because it was my treat that day, and when I went to pay, he knocked it off the bill, which was very kind of him. But I said it was actually really tasty. My lasagna, it was lovely. So I can thoroughly recommend that one in the Paul Jones Hotel. Oh, is it dead? Nobody in? Well, it's still out of season, really, though, isn't it? Play it non-stop in Liverpool. I know. Ferry cross the Mersey. Anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent then, as usual. Ivano's Italian takeaway in Dumfries was brilliant. Oh, I've never been there, Brian. I'll be honest with you though, when I go up, because I take Cooper with me, I don't like leaving him too long. I mean, he's a good boy. He just goes to sleep. He gets in bed and lies down. But at the end of the day, I'm going on holiday and taking my dog. I wouldn't do, you wouldn't do it with kids, would you? I chose to have a dog, so the 19th is quiet. It was bloody racket that weekend that we got down there. God, it was noisy. Right, yeah, I'll go back to Ferry Cross the Mersey. So, any of you seen the film The Letter to Brezhnev? Because and that's what that song always reminds me of. You know, when they get on the ferry, they're having this little love tryst, shall we say. Any of you who haven't seen it, do you know what, Brian? I didn't get the flipping notifications. I haven't read them. I will do when I get offline tonight. I promise you. I'll have a look. Sorry, I completely forgot. So the Letter to Brezhnev it's very funny film. It's very funny. It was made, I think it was made in the 80s, I think. If any of you know, I think it was made in the 80s. Oh, Janet, you've got to watch it. It's have you not seen it either, Brianna? Right. I actually think there is a link to watch it free on YouTube. Have a look. Letter to Brezhnev. Basically, it's very funny. It's two girls from Kirby, which is on the outskirts, for people who don't know, the outskirts of Liverpool. They're in a very poor area. One's not got a job. The other one's working in a chicken factory stuffing chickens. Um, they want to have a good time, and they go out on a night out, and they go into Liverpool on a night out, and they go into this club. I don't know if it's still there or not. It was called the State, club. They go in there and they bump into, and now bear in mind, this is when the Cold War was going on. This is when Russia had closed borders. A Russian ship has come over on some form of like a friendship trip, like an exchange. This Russian ship, Navy ship, has docked in Liverpool overnight, and they give the sailors shore leave. So these two Liverpudlian girls get off with these two Russian sailors, and it's all about one of them having this love affair, and she wants to go and live in Russia. Now, the mate that she goes out with is a British actress called Margie Clark, and I made friends with Margie Clark a few years ago. She started following me on Twitter, because I was like I was Twitter famous at the time, but she started following me on Twitter, and I love it. I think she's brilliant. She also starred in a film called Blonde Fist. She's well known. She's been in Benidorm. I think she did a guest appearance in Benidorm. She's done all sorts of things. I think she was in Clocking Off as well, wasn't she? But yeah, so I made friends with Margie Clark. Love her to pieces, and I always try and push people. Go over, give her a follow if you're on Twitter. Go and follow Margie Clark. She's brilliant. Oh, Janet, she's a good actress, but do you know what? She's fantastic. She followed me on Twitter, and I was like, "Are you the real Margie Clark?" Because it was back in the day when they had blue ticks when they were celebrities. I'm like, "Are you the real Margie Clark?" She's like, "Yeah." So we started having a chat, and she'd obviously been watching my Twitter, and she said, I love your sense of humour." So that was it. I think she's amazing. So yeah, anybody who goes on Twitter, give Margie a follow, and also have a watch of that film, because it's a feel good film, and it just shows, about just how funny working class Liverpudlians can be. It's great. So yeah, please watch that. A Letter to Brezhnev. I know, name dropping and everything. Oh, do you think so, Janet? I think do you know what? She's a lovely lady. I don't even know, how old is she now? Shouldn't do that, should you? You shouldn't ask a lady their age. But yeah, yeah, consider we've got an age difference, but yeah, really, really, really like her. Really like it. I think her mum was yes, it is called Humour Brian. Cheeky get. Okay, shall we do Dogmen? Or do you want to talk more about Vikings? Let me know. We can either talk a bit more about the Vikings and the Viking ships and the Wirral and Viking finds and historical things, or she never is. No, I didn't, Brian. Nobody knows how old I am or how young I am. Nobody. It's my secret. No, I don't tell anybody that because I don't want to get I'm not getting doxed. Yeah, place your bets. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, place your bets, place your bets. This story, this Dogman story is a story with a difference. Um how do I describe it now? You see, usually we're talking about the Dogman attacks or no, no, no. But I wouldn't tell you if I was. It's a good job. I was going to say if I was as old as you're only as old as the fella you're feeling. So no, nobody's right. I never, never tell anybody how old I am. It's one of my little I remember Bam trying to find out. She's going, "How old are you?" I'm like, "Not telling you." She goes, "No, you can tell me your friend." I'm going, "No, I'm not telling you. I won't tell anybody my age. Never have, never will." So no, Green Eyes isn't 53 or 54. Green Eyes is 21 with a couple of years experience. Right. I'm stopping digressing. You're an old lady now, but in your heart, you're still 21. Do you know, though, Frida? I remember my dad was saying this, and he said, it's really funny, isn't it? He said, and this will happen to you as you get older. He said, when you're in your teens, he said, somebody at the age of 30, they're an old fart. He said, then you get to 30. And he said, you've got people of 40 are an old fart. He said, and then you get to 40 and you're still feeling young. He said to people at 50 are an old fart. And then you hit 50 and you're still feeling really young. So people at 60 are an old fart. He said, and then you hit 60 and you still, and he said, and it just goes on. Now, my dad was 73 this time. And I said, and are you feeling really old this time? And he's just like, nah. He said, I'm still feeling like I was, because obviously he joined the army, as a young man. I mean, he did his first tour of Northern Ireland in, God, was it 1970? Yeah, 71. He was 21. Well, 1970 and 71. He was 20 going on 21. You're as old as your gums and a little bit older than your teeth. Yes. Now, my nana used to say that if anyone asked her age. Yeah, no, but she used to say, "I'm as old as my little finger and a little bit older than my teeth." So, yeah, so whatever age you're at, to somebody you're always going to be an old fart, and that was basically what my dad was trying to say. No matter how old you get, there's always going to be somebody older than you, and by the time there isn't anybody older than you, you've curled your toes up and you're in the ground anyway, so you don't actually care. Grandpa's 92. Wow, that's a cracking age, that, isn't it? That's brilliant. Right. I'm not going to digress anymore because Brian tries to put me off so he doesn't have to pay me any money. So we're going to talk about dogmen. Okay, dogmen. Now, as I was going to say, usually my stories are about these violent dogmen. We talk about the attacks. We've talked about these mysterious attacks on people that the authorities insist on putting on down as dog attacks. Oh, he was 50 when you. Oh, bless him. It's okay getting old as long as you still have your health. That's it, Frida. And do you know what? Who cares? Who cares? And you just you grow old as you. I remember my nana. She didn't have. She was. It was just. Hang on. She was 71. She died. It was a heart. She died very suddenly, and it was quite horrible for us all. But she was 71. It was in the January, as you all know, 23rd of January, death day for me. All the ladies in my family go on that day. My nan died then. She would have been 72 in the April. And she never dyed it. Never dyed her hair. And I know because, we were living with my nana. She never dyed her hair, and she just had just over her temples on either side. She just had little flecks of grey. So, and she didn't look her age. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Both my aunts don't look their ages. One's 80, one's 70. Well, she'll be 78 this year. So, just didn't. None of them look their age. So I'm hoping, I'll kind of age as gracefully. It is scary, and I always think, Brianna, should I get in touch with the Guinness Book of Records? Because it is literally my great grandmother, my mum, and then my nana all died different years on the same day. So I know that if when I know I will, the day I die, it's going to be the 23rd of January. Well, I've got to wait for it for another year. So I know I can be a complete dickhead for the rest of the year because it doesn't matter. I can take chances. I can, if there's like an armed robbery or something in a bank, I can charge at the gunman. I won't get shot because it's not the 23rd of January. I can be a have a go hero. So yeah, so I'm safe for another year. Well, part of a year anyway. Right. Not digressing any further, dogmen. So usually they are horrid dogmen. They are terrifying. They have attacked livestock, killed pets, terrorized families, chased people, done all sorts of things. This is a story with a difference. Now, oh, it's all right. It's going back up again. It's going back up again, Sid. Right. So, you know what I'm like. I'm up and down like a bloody yo-yo. Talking about all sorts of shite. Right. So this one is based around a young lad, and he lived in a rural community. Family had a farm, and they were one of these typical kind of rural American families where they were very close knit. So all the generations were living together. We had the grandparents were living in the house with the eldest son, his wife, and all their children. And one of these children was this guy, right? So he was about 9 or 10 years old at the time of this story. And with his siblings, he used to be out playing, playing on the farmland, going for walks. They'd go hunting, they'd take the dogs for walks, they'd go shooting, doing the things that kids in rural communities would do back when he was a child. Anyway, this one particular day, they were out. I think he said they were fishing. They were down at this river that ran, or a brook that ran nearby the property, and they were fishing. I don't know if they had rods or if they just had nets. Either way, they're out there fishing, and they heard that probably from not that far away, the most horrific snarling and growling, and they said they knew that this was a bad dog fight going on. They heard yelps and screeches and growls and howls and tearing, and just the sound of dog. When dogs are really going at it, but much much louder. So they heard all of this go. Yeah, it was Brian the Waltons, but that was the type of thing, typical, you know, American farming family, old-fashioned farming family. So he hears all this noise, and I'm going to say he was with his brother for the sake of argument. Him and his brother, they hear all this racket going on, and the brother is really scared because he's younger, and he leaves his brother. He runs off. He goes home. So this young lad is like, you know, great. And all of a sudden, there's like this one last nasty, tearing snarl, and this really like pitiful, like yelpy cry sort of noise. And then it's all silent. And being a young lad and being curious, as young boys are, he decided to go and investigate. Now, he's saying in hindsight, "Hi, Barbara, lovely to see you. We've only just started this story. You've missed the Viking, we were talking about the Viking ship that's been found. Um, but I'll leave them up if you want to catch up. But we've just started this story. So come in, sit down, take the weight off, and enjoy." So he said, as an adult now, he thinks in hindsight, kids have no fear, do they? But he said, if I'd heard that as an adult, I'd be running in the opposite direction. But as, like, say, a 10-year-old boy, he decides he's going to go and have a look. So, oh, don't you worry, Barbara. I nearly fell asleep on myself. So, and Brian's been betting me that I won't finish a story. He's betting hard cash. One, that I won't start them, and two, that I won't finish them. Well, I've already started and finished one, and I'm on number two now. So Brian's going to be skint by the end of the night. So he goes off and he decides to investigate. So he crosses this little river, brook, whatever it is, stream. He crosses that and goes in the direction of where he thinks he heard these noises coming from. And after, 5 to 10 minutes or so of mooching around, he starts to see a lot of disturbance, bushes and twigs and stuff on the ground, as though something has gone ploughing through, you know, um, this little copse of bushes. And as he goes to investigate, he then sees that there's this. Well, he notices like these furry kind of leg things lying on the floor, and he goes through a gap in these bushes that that's been broken. All these branches are snapped, and there's a real like a pathway through these what would have been quite tightly knit bushes. And there on the floor is, he said, now he knows it was a dog man, but at the time he just thought it was a gigantic wolf. There is a gigantic female wolf dead, and it has been attacked badly. It's basically, it's been torn to pieces, and he's just standing there like, oh my god. He doesn't think, shit, whatever killed that is could like still be here. He's just more like, oh my goodness, this is massive. They asked him what size it was. He said, you know what, as a kid, I couldn't tell you. It was just big. He said, maybe if I guess 6 foot, something like that. He said, but one, it was lying on the floor, and two, I was 10 years old. I didn't think about scale or what have you. So he's busy looking at this dead wolf, in inverted commas, on the floor. They can do both, Frida. They walk on all fours, and then they can also become bipedal. And when they do, what people say is that they hear, as the dogman stands up, they hear all this snapping and cracking, really loud snapping and cracking. And that seems to be quite common with dogmen sighting. Sometimes people haven't seen the dogman first. They hear snapping and cracking and what have you, and thinking, what the hell is that? And then they'll see a dogman standing up on its hind legs. So yeah, it is very common, but they can do both. They can walk and run on 2 legs. Quite frightening, isn't it? So he's looking at this thing. I know it's really creepy. They're looking at this thing on the floor, and he suddenly it's basically lying against the base of a tree. And there are gouges on this tree as well. So it looks like, he's thinking maybe it yeah, I know, Sid and Brian, arthritis. I thought, maybe it's, tendons and joints, as they're coming up into this, I don't know, this position. I mean, it's obviously natural for them to do, so I don't understand why there's all the cracking noise, but there's a reason, obviously, isn't there? So he notices that there are kind of claw gouges in the trunk of this tree, and he's thinking maybe this dead one was trying to climb the tree to get away from whatever attacked it. And as he looked up, he suddenly realised he could see movement. And on the first of the low branches, clinging to the tree trunk, is a baby, well, a pup. He said now it was a baby dog man, but he didn't know. He said it was a wolf cub. He thought it was a wolf cub. And it's kind of making a little pathetic mewling sound. Yes, Frida, that's possibly what it is, clicking into this, into a locked position, maybe. So he actually can climb up. There are a couple of like lower branches nearby, and there is an overturned log as well. And he rolls that over, to the base of the tree, and he manages to stand on it, get up onto a lower branch, and he reaches this pup. And it's probably about a foot long. And he said it's kind of shaking and whimpering. And although it's not tiny, he realizes it's very, very young. It's very young. The size has given it away. So he has hold of it. He gets down. He then starts to think about what's happened, and he thinks, maybe this is its mother, because as he gets down, it's this thing is trying to get away from him to get to this dead dog man on the floor. And he kind of lets go of it at one point, and it's nuzzling at the dead, which is obviously its mum. And then he picks it up again, gets it inside his jacket, zips it up, and decides to take it home. So he thinks that probably the fight that was going on, this mother dog man was protecting her baby, and she's fought to the death to protect it. And that's what he's thinking. Okay. So he gets home with this pup, and being farmers, he knows that his dad and that's it, Julie, yeah, dog lady protecting the cub, yeah. So he thinks that his dad is probably not going to want him to have a wolf pup. So he takes it into the barn, and he goes up into the hayloft, and he puts it up there because there's less likelihood of somebody just walking in and spotting it. If it's up in the hayloft, there's less chance. So up he goes with it. And he said as he puts it down, this little thing isn't walking on all fours, it's walking on its back two legs. And he said it was really funny because it reminded him of the film Gremlins. And he said the Gremlins film had been out round about the time that this was happening. So he was, as I said, he was about 10 years old at the time. And he said that that was what stuck in his head, as he found a gremlin. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was similar. And it had these very sharp, these long fingers, 5 long fingers with these claws on them. And it walked around like in a clown-like manner on its back legs. So that's what he's thinking. He's found a gremlin. So he goes in the house, and he, trying to, without being noticed, pinches a bit of milk, gets it back out to the barn. This pup's not having any of it. He tries all sorts. He tries dog food. It's not having anything of it. It's then trying to howl, and he's really worried. He doesn't want it howling because he doesn't want anyone alerted to it being here. I was like, what the hell, what the hell, what the hell? So the last choice is he gets back into the fridge, nobody's around, and he nicks some steak. There's some raw steak in there. He gets it in. This thing nearly has his hand off trying to get to it, and it's sucking the blood out of the steak, and it eats it. So he knows that this little puppy needs to have meat. Now, once it had the meat, it then would take milk. So it's on a diet of both. So he thinks, right, so I'm going to have raw meat for it in some form or another, and milk. And once it's been fed, it curls up. Hi, Wiccan. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry to hear that, love. Oh, I hope you feel better soon, sweetheart. A dog, they or them. Oh, God, don't start with the pronouns, Sid. Bloody hell. I've had enough of that. I don't do pronouns in here, as you all know. I'm not that politically correct. So he has this baby dog man for probably 48 hours, and his granddad cottons on. And his granddad knows exactly what this thing is. Now, he said he'd never heard about these before. His dad, granddad, grandma, no one had ever mentioned dogmen or the fact that things like this existed. But when his granddad realised what this was, he went and got his gun. He was going to shoot it. You can imagine all hell broke loose. This little boy is kind of thrown himself over this dog man, this puppy. He's not going to let anybody touch it. You can't stay, stay away from it. It's mine, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, so the granddad is saying it's just going to kill everything. So in the end, they agree, they make a little pen for it, and it has a chain. So it can stay on this chain unless he's with it to supervise it. It's got to stay on its chain or in this cage. And over the next several weeks, this pup is going from strength to strength, and it's growing. And he realizes, he's and it's friendly. It's not vicious with him. It's worrier of the grandfather, and the grandfather has nothing to do with it. His dad has, he said, if you are keeping this, you are 100% responsible for it. And if it does any damage to any livestock, I'm going to come out here and I'm going to kill it. So you are responsible for this dog. And that's the end of it. And he named it. I can't remember the name of it, so I'm going to call it Blue. We're going to call him Blue. This is after talking about, I was talking about something else to somebody else the other night, a song, me and you and a dog called Blue, that, what was it called? The Point? I think we've had this conversation before, haven't we, Sid? I said my dad has got, by Nilsson, that album about the kid with the pointy head, or rather the people with pointy heads and the kid who didn't and ended up with a dog called Blue. So I'm going to call this dog man Blue. So they start growing up together. And as this dog is growing, it's showing more and more different traits. It's an avid climber. Me and my arrow, that's the one, Sid. So, sorry, I can hear Porky laughing upstairs. Kiss my, they, them, it, our, theirs, why, scaldlit. No. I am a she. That's it. End of. If you're born with a tallywhacker, you're a he. And if you've got a muff, you're a she. I'm not having any of it, them, or they, or their. It's like babies are calling them they-bees now. These people who don't want to put a gender on the baby, so they're going to call it a they-bee. Piss off. Anyway, so fannies and tallywhackers, men and women, I don't care. If you're buried, no matter what you identify as, no matter what surgery you've had, if your body's dug up in 3,000 years and they look at your bones, an archaeologist's going to go, man or woman. That's it. Muff, I know. So, my opinion, not changing it. I go with the biology. Facts are facts. If it offends anybody, sorry, not sorry. I've had arguments about this on Twitter many times, and I'm still not going to back down on it. I've not got a problem with people of any sex or any sexual preference. But yeah, I'm not doing this bloody they or what have you. I'm dead, am I? I don't care. Anywho, so Kiss, dogmen remind me of Tarzan being brought up with wolves. Yes. And you know what, Julia? I've recently been wondering. Hi, Helen. Sorry, am I offending everybody? Oh, well. I was talking about you before. I don't know if you heard about the Wirral story we were talking about. Yeah, I've sometimes wondered, Julia, when you hear about feral children being brought up by wolves or dogs, especially in America, and I think sometimes I've thought, were they dogs or wolves, or could they have been dogmen? There have been several, Frida. Oh yeah, the first hour, Helen, was about the Viking ship at Mel's that they are currently excavating. So we were talking about that, and I'm going to keep people posted on it. So yeah, we were just talking about the Wirral, and yeah, and then I was kind of singing Ferry Cross the Maisie. So yeah, I've thought sometimes about that. Could it have possibly been dogmen that were raising these children? Because don't forget, the Native Americans have a lot of stories about women and children being snatched from villages. Is it any stretch of the imagination that they might not have been snatched for food? Yeah, that's the one, the railway pub. It's in the it's the patio, isn't it, of the railway? Yes, I thought that they could copy each other even in that. That's right, Julia. Yeah, so you know, it's not impossible. Tarzan was brought up by apes. I mean, you can find that more feasible though, can't you? To, you know, being brought up by apes than by dogs, but you know, whatever. Nonsense, then talking more nonsense, but it's cost you money. Well, and it's going to cost you more before the night's out, Brian. Cha-ching! You better get working that overtime, lad. Or if we've got a Scouse theme, la, get working, la. Yeah, we were talking about Letter to Brezhnev as well, Helen, because a few people haven't. Julia hasn't watched. Sorry, not Julia. Janet hasn't watched Letter to Brezhnev. Brianna hasn't watched it, so I was recommending it because I got a friend who's in that, as you all know, Margie. So back to the story, just for Brian, just to piss him off, because he's bet me, Helen, that I won't finish a story. He bet me I wouldn't start a story. 23 quid if I didn't start a story, and 20 quid if I managed to finish one. Well, I finished one already and I'm about to finish number two, but we'll see. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink because my mouth's a bit dry. I know, that's just Brian, isn't it? He said it's £12.50 each, didn't he? Oh, no, no, he better pay her. No, well, if it was 12.50 each, that would be 25 quid. So what was he on about £12.50 each for, Frida? Oh, I never know how Brian's mind is working. And yes, he better had pay up. Right, that was our little musical interlude. Let's get back to the Dogman story. So, this lad, over the next year and a half, and this dog, Dogman Blue, we'll call, as I said, we're going to call him. It, although it's growing very, very big, it doesn't seem to be maturing as quickly as a normal canine would. So, you know, as any of you with dogs know, you know, by the age of 6 months old, they could be, you know, they can be sexually mature, especially male dogs. You know, once the bollocks have dropped, they're kind of gung ho and up for it. It's in America, Sid, and I can't remember the state. I can send you the link for it. I'll send you that link for the story. You've lost £12.50. Oh, bloody hell. So this it with bitches, again, you know, they can get the first season anywhere between 6 months and 18 months old. You know, it just depends on the dog. I had a collie that got its first season she was 18 months old. But Cooper's mum, which, you know, totally irresponsible. Cooper's mum got her first season at 6 months old, and their male dog got her pregnant. So she had a litter of 10 puppies at 8 months old, which is pathetic, you know, 10 bloody puppies. So with dogmen, this guy was saying this was still very juvenile, and it was more, you know, when you look at a dog man being kind of human-like, although it's not human, it is an animal, but it's got human traits. So he said that maybe this slow maturation rate was based on these kind of partially human qualities. So it was maturing faster than a human child would, but not as quick as a dog. It was kind of somewhere in between. So by about a year old, this thing was it was yeah, it was probably, I don't know, like a 10-year-old boy, at about a year old. By a year and a half, it was like a teenager, 16, 17-year-old lad. That was kind of the way that he was describing it. So it's showing all of these different traits. It is fast. It is it was very protective of him, very protective of him. And he would start going out into the forest with it as it got older. And it never ever made any attempt at killing any of the livestock. And he said it was as though it knew that these were off limits. He said it did show a level of intelligence. And he also said that um, although he never put it into words properly, that he was able to communicate. He knew that this dogman, his dogman called Blue, understood him. So he only had to think of things, and he said, and he thinks that's why the dogman never touched any of the cattle or the sheep or the pigs or the chickens or the rabbits or the horses that they owned, because he was always thinking that if you touch any of these, my dad's going to shoot you. Please don't touch anything like this. But, you're going to die and you're my best friend and we do everything together. He'd even go as far as going up into the hayloft with this dog and sleeping with it. It was being fed, might have been different if it was hungry. Well, maybe. However, well, as I said, as the story progresses, you'll see that, yeah, I'll not ruin it just yet, Julia. So they started going out on these little excursions together, and the dog man had been running on ahead and it'd be bounding along and basically bouncing up to the top of trees. And he said, and one day while they were out, there was a big paddock near the farm, and it went over towards the forest. Now, his granddad had never got over this dogman. He didn't want it there. He did not want it there at all. He used to go mad at his grandson for going out with it. His own father was okay, actually. I think once he'd seen that this thing was devoted to him. However, whenever the other men in the family turned up in the barn, this thing would get as far away from them as it possibly could. If it was on its chain, it would try and get up into the rafters as far as it could get while it was on the chain, away from them. And I think from how he described it, it did see the two dominant men in the house as real threats. It never had any contact with them. Um, Now, he said his dad would occasionally, if he was at school and it was feeding time, his dad would go into the barn, he'd throw, the food up onto the top, like the meat or what have you, but he never went into the space that this dogman could get to on the end of its chain. So he always made sure he was just slightly out of reach. His dad never trusted it, but it never did anything. It never made any attempt at harming anybody in that family, none whatsoever. Anyway, so this day they're out, they're crossing this meadow, they're going towards the wood. Dogman is bouncing, from tree to tree and running back to him and sniffing around and what have you. And all of a sudden, it grinds to a halt, it sticks its head in the air and it starts to sniff. And it's looking in the direction of the forest. And it's very, very thick forest. And then he said, and then we heard a howl. And it was quite a way away, but they heard this distant howl. And Blue answered back. And as he answered back, he said, oh God, he said it was the worst thing that ever happened. He said, because all of these different howls started, from different points, in front to the side, to, all across the view he had, which was the forest stretching out before him. There were howls coming from probably about 9 or 10 different areas in response to Blue's howl. And he was like, oh my God. And you could see Blue didn't want to come back to the farm. He's like, no, come back, come back, come back. So he shouted him and shouted him, and in the end, reluctantly, Blue came back. But after that, there started to be some, let's say, not too pleasant encounters. Grandfather was saying that he had seen a dog man very close to the farmhouse, sniffing around. His dad had said that he was pretty sure he'd seen one. Blue's Clues, yeah. Pretty sure that he'd seen one at the far end of the paddock where the cattle were kept. The cattle were having a bit of a shit fit about it. And grandfather then said that this thing had to go. He said it is going to draw these things in, and we don't want any more here. He said, you either got to let it go and keep it away, or I'm going to shoot it. So very reluctantly, he let it go. Now, he said he did speak to it, hoping that it would understand. And he said, and hugging it, and curled up with him and giving him a love and said, you'll always be my friend. I will never harm you, but you need to go and you need to stay away because you'll be harmed. So Blue left. Now, he said probably about 6 months later, he was in bed at night and he heard a scratching on the farmhouse wall just below his bedroom window. And he woke up, and when he looked down, it was Blue, and Blue had been injured. So he was like straight down. He could see that he was in a bit of a bad way. So he was straight downstairs, and Blue had bite marks and scratches on him and so on. And he was quite weak because he still wasn't a fully grown dog man. He was the equivalent of a 16, maybe a 7, 15, 16, 17-year-old boy. He wasn't fully mature. He still had to fill out or what have you. He didn't have all his muscles. He wasn't as jacked and ripped as a lot of these dogmen are described as. So he takes him and gets him into the barn, and he goes and gets a first aid kit and gets stuff to clean up these wounds, and he gets some food, and he makes a bed in the straw for him, and he settles him down there, and he goes back into the house, and his dad had woken up because this was probably about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. The dad had heard him going out and coming back in again, and he was up, and he just said, Blue's come back and he's quite badly injured and he's in the barn, and please don't do anything to him. I just want to make him better and what have you. And the dad was like, yeah, okay, no problem. Just keep him, the usual rules apply. Better be free than chained up. Yeah, yeah. It I feel sorry for, because he obviously he tried to make it with the wild pack. And I suppose this is similar to what happens to animals when they've been kept in captivity and then they're turned loose and they try to integrate into a wild pack and they just get attacked. But anyway, so Blue stuck around again for probably another 2 or 3 weeks until he was fully healed. And then he said just one morning he went in to see him and he left. And he said goodbye to him and he gave him a hug and he just left. And he walked back in the direction of the forest and then got on all fours and ran. And he thought that was going to be the last time he ever saw him. Now, we're going to jump forward about a year. So at this point now, our lad is, I think he said he was 13. So Blue would have been like 3 years old, something like that. So he's at this point, he is a fully mature dog man. And the young lad is out helping out on the farm. Now, being on the farm, he was allowed to run the tractors and the combine machines and what have you, but he was on a tractor and he was actually ploughing a field, and he'd stopped for a lunch break. He had sandwiches and a drink and what have you. It's quite a warm day. So he stopped to have his lunch and turned the engine off. And he said, as he turned the engine off, he heard the most awful racket awful, awful racket coming from the woods. And he said straight away, he said, I knew what it was. It just reminded him back 3 years ago when he'd heard the dogman fight with Blue's mum and whatever it was that had attacked her. And he said, I just knew. He said, and something made me think it's Blue. Blue's going to be killed. Oh God, I'm going to find his body. And he couldn't stop thinking about it. And as much as he shouldn't have done it, he left his job. He did have a shotgun with him. You know, he was allowed to carry his shotgun, and he took the shotgun and he headed off into the woods in the direction of the noise. And this was ongoing, snarling, growling, he can hear crashing, and he's getting closer and closer and closer to it. And in the end, he comes to, there's like rocks, and it's a little mini cliff. It's only probably 20 feet. So these rocks, and then there's a 20-foot drop into a bit of a clearing. And as he comes to the edge of these rocks and looks down, Blue is, and it is Blue, is fighting with this big, older, you could tell it was an older male dogman. And they're going at it, going at it, going at it, going at it. And he's just like, you know, he wants to shoot, but he can't shoot in case he hits Blue. He doesn't know what to do, and he's just fixated. Really, he should run away because, you know, he's thinking, if this thing kills Blue and then it realizes I'm here and oh my God, you know, what do I do? But he couldn't move. This is his friend. And as sad as it is, he's watching what he thinks is his friend is going to get killed. And after another maybe 10 minutes of this, he said he's amazed because Blue is coming off better off. He's getting the better of this dogman. And in the end, Blue just gets into the neck of this dogman and he rags it and he beats it. And this thing lies on the floor and it's breathing its last. And he said, and he sees the weirdest thing ever. He said, now usually, you know, when you see like a dog fight or a wolf fight or a lion fight or whatever, they fight and then they, you know, they come better off and they kill the opponent and then they leave it, don't they? Unless it's an opponent that's going to be edible. Janet, you've got it in one. He said what Blue then did was this thing's breathed its last. It's dead. He said Blue proceeded to stomp the shit out of it. He said it was like he was in a rage. He was clawing, tearing, he was ripping shreds out of this thing. He was jumping on it, punching it, tearing, you know, ears off. He was pulling the limbs, everything. And he said it was a pure rage, and all he could think of was, especially the fact that this was an older dogman, and he could see, you know, it was getting a bit grey or what have you. And he said, just something told me this was the thing that had attacked and killed Blue's mum. He said, I just knew it. He said, and I don't know whether it was intuition or whether I was getting it from Blue. He said, I also knew that this was the thing that had obviously attacked Blue, you know, a year ago and nearly killed him. He said, I knew that. I don't know how. I just knew it. He said, and I also knew that the reason that Blue's mum had been killed was genuinely to protect Blue as a baby, because this dominant dogman, the leader of the pack, whatever he was, had wanted Blue was fathered by a rival, and its sole intention had been to kill this pup and to possibly mate with his mother. And, you know, she died to protect him. And the dogman had never been able to find Blue. Blue'd been up the tree, but, you know, this dogman he'd just slaughtered didn't know he was there. So that was the end of him. And he said, I just knew all of these things. He said, and all I can put it down to is telepathy. Blue was telling me these, you know, these stories in so many words. I got the full story. It had tried to kill him as a baby. His mum had died protecting him. It had nearly killed him a year ago. Now that he was older and stronger and more mature, he'd come back to have another go, and this time he had managed to kill it. And then the howling started, and there was howling all round. He said, and one by one, coming out into this clearing, he said, and still nobody knew he was there. One by one, more dogmen appeared. He said, male and female. He said there were 9, 10, 12 of them, whatever. He said, and out of the trees they came into this clearing, and they all stood around, and he thought it was going to be an attack on Blue, and it wasn't. He said they literally all were kind of not bowing to him, but they were kind of crouched, and he just took it that this was kind of a mark of respect, submissive respect. So the way he had to look at it was that this thing that he'd just killed, was it possibly the pack leader? And that was the role that Blue had now stepped into. So he crept away. He thought, well, Blue's okay. Oh, no, no, Marie, thanks for coming in, lovely. I hope that it's kept you entertained for a little while. But it's lovely to see you, and thank you so much. At least you've got a wrench now. You take care, and I hope that you sleep well. So he knows that Blue is now safe. He is obviously got respect from the dogmen in the surrounding area, and he can rest easy. Now, we're going to fast forward another year, and he goes into, he's getting something out of one of the barns. It's not the barn that Blue used to live in, it's one of the other barns that they have. He's going in there one morning to get something out, and he hears some noises. And he's thinking, what the bloody hell's that? And they sound like they're coming from, again, like most of these barns, they have haylofts upstairs, even if they're not used as a hayloft anymore. This particular barn, in what was the hayloft in this, there was a lot of old furniture. You know, like a lot of farmers, my family were the same. They didn't throw anything away. If they got new furniture, they didn't throw the old stuff away. It just got put in storage. So this is what had happened here. There was furniture up there that was, possibly like the best part of 100 years old. There are old dressing, sideboards, dressing tables, wardrobes, bed frames, you name it. It's up there in this hayloft. And he can hear some noises. So he decides to investigate. And he said, I just had a feeling. He said, because normally he wouldn't have gone and investigated. They get animals in, there'd be raccoons, rats, squirrels, what have you. If he investigated every single noise he heard, he said it'd be there from now until doomsday. But he just had a feeling with this one. So he goes up, there's like ladders going up. Saying ladders, but they're the type that had handles. So he said they're more like stairs, but they're classed as ladders. So up these stairs, ladders, he went into the loft, and he said there are two baby dogmen kind of play fighting on the floor. And he said he's just standing, he's only kind of shoulders and head sticking up through the gap. So he's more or less at eye level with these pups, and the play fighting. And then he said, and then he sees coming from behind some of this stored furniture are a pair of hind legs. And he looks, and it's a female dogman, and my God, is she intent on him. Her lips are pulled back. She is, her claws are out. She is about to attack him. She's just not having any of it. And then from the other side, so this dogman lady is coming from the left-hand side from behind the furniture. From the right-hand side, which is the way that you would gain access through the windows into the upper part of the barn, he said, comes Blue. And he said Blue kind of made some chattering noise, and the female dogman kind of backed off. And he said he realised that this was, they were with Blue, and he said all I can surmise is that these were Blue's kids. He'd brought them to see him. He said not in so many words. He said, but he couldn't believe it. And this female dogman, the mother, has obviously backed away now. He said he was quite scared of going near her, but he knew that after whatever Blue had done, or said or you know, gestured that she wouldn't do him any harm. So he actually came up into the hayloft, and these two babies, although they were kind of a little bit wary of him, they did come over and approach him. So he said, after this initial meeting, he said, although Blue's mate was never comfortable, she never really came into close contact with him, she was quite happy. This was in the 1980s, Frida, because as he'd said, when he found Blue, the Gremlins film had been out round about the same time. And I think, was that about, I don't know, was that about 84, 83, something like that? If somebody wants to check. But it was, the Gremlins film had just been out. So whenever that was, that was when he found Blue. So we're now talking 4 years on from that. In fact, I can look it up myself because I forget I've got my tablet. So give me a second. Unless somebody beats me to it. It'll give me my voice a little rest as well, because I am getting a little bit dry-mouthed. Okay. Let's have a look. Gremlins. 1980. Oh yeah, there you go. You got it. 1984. So at this point, we're in 1988. So yeah, it was 84 when he found the pup, and we're now 4 years on from that. So he said from that point on, they would usually come round at least once a week. So these two pups became tame, if you will, and he also started to, now fun to take pics of it. I know, Frida, I know. Well, he has said that he has got photographs of Blue. I haven't seen them. I know that he was trying to get encouraged to make them public. Whether he has or not, I don't know. I think we would have heard if he had. But he did say he has got photographs of Blue as a puppy. He's got photographs of Blue as an adult. And he's got photographs of puppies as well. Now, over the course of this year, he became quite attached with these young pups. And his Blue's mate would tolerate him. He couldn't get closer to it than 6 to 10 feet. That was kind of the distance she was comfortable with, and it was the distance he was comfortable with. But she never made any attempt on him. Other than that first time, never was an attempt made. And again, nothing ever happened with the livestock. You know, they were coming here on a weekly basis, maybe sometimes twice a week. The livestock was never damaged. And he said, and I knew that that was Blue, making sure that these pups and his missus did nothing to jeopardize this relationship. So whenever they turned up, he would, he would have something for them. He would go and get them meat or milk or what have you. He would always have something for them. And this went on for probably like the next 10 years or so. And there were a few litters. So I think he said in the end there were, I'm sure he said it was 7. It was either 6 or 7 of Blue's children that were brought regular basis on a regular basis, and then that he would, you know, tame them, if you will. And he got relationships with all of these pups, and he watched them grow. Now, Grandpa and Grandma died, and then his own mum, she died. I think she actually, sorry, his mum died when he was in his still in his teens, of an illness of some sort. He would be tortured by the media. Yeah, nobody would believe him anyway. They would, you know what happens with Sasquatch photographs and other dogman photos? They're called fakes anyway. And then what would the government do? You know, would the government try and catch them? Would the government try and kill them? There's always disinformation, isn't there? So yeah. Anyway, So time goes on. Grandpa and grandma have died. Mum's died. When his dad died, he was the eldest of the children, and he inherited the farm. And he moved in, as you know, as happened with his own wife and their first child. And all of this time, Blue has still been there, obviously getting older, and his pack was getting bigger. And he would come with his children. Like I said, there were 6 or 7 of them. And they'd appear. Sometimes they wouldn't come down to the farm. They would stay up on the ridge, or they would come to the edge of the woods, or they'd be in the field, and he'd sometimes go out and see them, and sometimes he wouldn't. He would leave food for them. And again, none of the livestock was ever damaged. His own wife was uncomfortable about this, but when he'd said, this is, it's something that we've got to protect. These are creatures that we don't want people knowing about, and we're going to protect them. And I've grown up around these dog men, if you will. And then the next generation are being born, so the sons and daughters of Blue are then having their own pups. However, Blue is now getting quite elderly, and these third generation of dogmen are not quite as tame, if you will. So all he's got is Blue and Blue's direct descendants. Their progeny, not so much. And he said that he could sense that there was kind of a reverting back to the wild with these. So he would walk out into the woods, and he'd done this a long time, and he'd sometimes shout Blue, and Blue would come, and sometimes some of his children would appear as well. But he said when their children started to grow, he was feeling less safe. They were looking more like this tame streak had now gone. And he said, and then one day, Blue just never appeared anymore. And he spent a long time looking for him, a long time, and he never saw him again. And he said that he doesn't know. He would like to think that he just died rather than he was deposed and killed, because it was quite a close knit pack. And he said the only thing that was different between their pack and a wolf pack was that there wasn't kind of this push to oust the pack leader. In this respect, they seemed to have more of a human view on leadership, as in, you're in that role until you die or you give it up, rather than you're in that role. Sometimes you might get killed, like he did with his predecessor, but it was more common to be in that role for life. And so he said that was kind of the impression he got. So we would like to think that Blue had just died. He was searching for his body and he never found it. So he said, it does make me wonder whether, how they dispose of their dead. Do they do similar to like the Neanderthals did with their dead, which would be to eat them? They'd eat the dead to honour them, and therefore there would be very little trace of the dead found. Or would they maybe bury them? They don't know. There's a series on at the moment on BBC Planet about 30 wild dogs. Oh, is that good, Green Eyes? Oh, you like the name Blue. Are they the African dogs, Green Eyes? Yeah, I like the name Blue as well. My friend's got a little Shih Tzu called Blue, funnily enough. And yeah, this wonder if Blue's puppies would attack him. Well, this is it, Frida, because after searching for weeks and weeks and weeks, yeah, maybe they do, Janet, eat them so no evidence is left behind. Possibly. But you see, wolves don't eat their own. So it's just weird, isn't it? Yeah, it's about wolves and different wild dogs. Oh, I'll have a look at that then. Thank you for that, Green Eyes. Thanks for that recommendation. So after several weeks of looking, he finally gave up. And he said one night he'd just gone for an evening stroll. He had his own dogs with him, and he was just kind of walking around the boundaries of the property. And he'd like to check the fencing and so on, because obviously cattle being cattle, they rub their asses on a fence, they snap it, and then out they get. Sheep are notorious at getting through the smallest of gaps. So most evenings he would, if he had nothing else to do and he hadn't managed to do it through the day, he'd take the dogs and he'd walk the boundaries of his property. And this particular night, as he came towards the forest, he was aware that there were a couple of dog men, and these were, well, one of them he knew for a fact was one of Blue's sons. The other one he didn't recognise. He said, I can't say if it was or it wasn't one of his children. Oh, sorry, I'm hiccuping. Sorry about that. That was weird. Fucking Balsy just bit you on your ear. Oh, no. I had one bite me up my nose, Green Eyes. Actually crawled up my nose and bit me, and I had an insect bite up my nose. Can you imagine trying to scratch that? Oh, it was awful. So he said there were two of them, and he shouted like he always did, but this time they didn't come. And he walked a bit closer, and now he said up to this point his own dogs had never bothered, and this from being a child up to now being an adult and a father himself. Every dog he'd ever had right the way through had never had an issue with any of these dog men. They'd never been frightened, they'd never been aggressive. They literally had just reacted to them in the same way that they reacted to everybody else in the family. But the dogs reacted completely differently this time. He had a coonhound with him that was, he said it was a bit of a dizzy dog. It was very friendly, very puppy-like, even though it was 2 or 3 years old. It was a giddy puppy, boinging all over the place. He said this thing, which had no sense whatsoever, it was not going to go any nearer. And he said it was growling. The other dog, which was a crossbreed Labrador, he said again, that was just not, and that was more tail between its legs, worry. It wasn't growling, but it definitely wasn't happy. And he said, I actually looked at these dogmen and I thought, that is a menacing vibe I'm getting from you guys. So I'm going to back away very slowly. And he's thinking this all the time. And he's thinking, right, I'm not going to do you any harm, but I would appreciate it if you will let me return to my family and I'll let you return to yours. And it's been nice to see you, but I think maybe we won't see each other again. And he said he's thinking things like this and he's backing away. And then he said, I just thought, I'm going to turn my back on you now and I'm going to walk away and I would appreciate you if you let me. And he said, and they did. His dogs were very, very tense until they probably got 100 meters away. So then they kind of relaxed a bit, which made him think, great, they've gone. They're not following me. They've gone, or they've stayed where they were, but they're not following me. And he said, after that, yeah, well, this is it though, Green Eyes. A lot of people do think that they are able to communicate telepathically. So he said after this had happened, he said then they started losing stock every so often. Not a lot, but the odd sheep would go. And he said, they did have quite a large flock of sheep. He said the odd sheep, in the grand scheme of things, wasn't massive. However, when it started with they were taking cattle, so at first it was 1 or 2 calves, and then they actually took a full grown steer. And he said at that point he's like, right, now this is a problem. So he had a word with his wife, he had a word with a couple of his brothers who were also aware of what was going on there, and they thought that the best thing to do would be that the next time he were to see these dog men was to potentially fire at them, to shoot at them and give them a warning. Maybe not shoot directly at them, shoot above the head, shoot into the ground, but let them know that they're not welcome anymore. The fact that a line's been crossed now, and you've now started killing my animals, and that was never part of the deal. And, you know, this was never part of the deal with your father. It was never part of the deal with you guys. Just, you know, you now need to not be here anymore. So let me just see what Frida's put. I remember on holiday, a girl bending over playing snooker. She had a mini skirt on, her bum cheeks were covered in mozzie bites. Oh, God. Spotty ass. Oh, gosh. I got them all over my arse up in Scotland a couple of years ago. That was not pleasant. Because I was really hot. I was really, really warm. And stupidly, I thought, yeah, I'm going to sleep in the knack. And I was sleeping on top of the damn bed clothes with my arse in the air. Yeah, I got what I paid for. My friend was the worst, green eyes. She got bitten all over her face and she looked like she'd gone 10 rounds. Her eyes were swollen shut, her lips were swollen. Oh, she was in a terrible state. So, we're coming to the end of this one. So, he has this family conference and he asks his brothers that will they, you know, stick around. One lived very close by, the other one lived further afield, but he did say, you know, can we arrange, one weekend, can you come over and stay and we will all go out together? So, you know, we're kind of in force. And he said, and the brothers are like, yeah, weekend after next. One of them wasn't working. The other one, you know, he had some time off work as well, and said that they would come over and they would, you know, help him. And he said, for the next fortnight up to this time, he said every night he was out there and he said these dogmen were appearing on the forest edge. And he said, so he would sit there on his porch with his gun in, you know, in full sight. And he said, it's the only time they'd ever seen me with a gun. And he said it was loaded and it was cocked and it was waiting there. It was on my knee. And he'd have his coffee and his cigarette on the porch. And he'd be thinking, don't come any closer, because if you cross that boundary there, that invisible boundary just at the edge of the forest, I'm going to have to hurt you and I don't want to. Please stay where you are. Please don't come onto my property again. And he said this went on for every single night for that first week. He said the second week, so obviously his brothers are due to come that Friday night, come in and get off me land. Oh, thank you, Janet. That's really kind of you. Thank you. I'm going to be a big head and put that up on my screen. Oh, I'm glad you've enjoyed it, Green Eyes. So every night for that first week, they're there and he is thinking this to them and he's trying to telepathically send this message to them that I don't want to hurt you, but I'm going to have to. Yeah, I think they were, Janet. I think this was a bit of an FU. So the second week, he said on, you know, as the start of the second week, he said there were lots of howling going on through the night. He said it was very unnerving. His wife was getting quite bothered with it. They had a toddler at the time. She was getting quite worried about this because there is there are a lot of these dogmen. He can't even tell how many there are. Now, he was aware way back when, you know, there were maybe 9, 10, 12 of them paying homage to Blue. But he was saying, you know, don't forget, Blue had children, his children had children. All the other dogmen that were part of that pack have probably been breeding as well, you know. He said, so how many there were, he said, I don't even know. But he said, when they were howling that night, you know, he said it was really, really unnerving. He said, I cannot even tell you how many there were. He said, but I just thought, if these decide to come charging down out of the woods at this farmhouse, we are dead. But they didn't. He said, so that was that first night, was all the howling. He said, the second night, nothing. But when on the morning of the third day, he said he went out to the field and there were 2 cows missing. He said, and he's thinking, oh, they really are, that they have they've fucked off now, haven't they? They've really fucked it. 2 cows were missing. So he thought, this is just it. It's going to get nasty. We're going to have to kill things. It's a kill or be killed situation. I've asked them not to kill anything of mine. I've asked them not to come on the property. This is just downright defiance. Game on. And on the night, so that's the morning of the 3rd day. That night, so the 3rd night, he said the howling started again. Only this time it was a hell of a lot closer and there weren't as many. So he went out onto his porch. The wife's panicking at this point and she's saying, you need to ring your brothers to come out like before weekend because this is going to get bad. That they're coming closer. You said we would be safe. You said that they wouldn't come into the farm. You said that they would stay away. This is, I want something done about it. You need to get them sorted out, please. And he's like, don't worry about it. And he went out onto the porch and he said he was sat there and it's going dusk now. And he can make out that there is one dog man and it's pretty close. It's probably from the back porch. It's maybe 200 yards away. So there's only the one. He can hear a bit of howling going on behind. There's a howl here, a howl there. Not like that first night when they all kicked off and it was everywhere. So there's a little howl here, a little howl there. He said, sounds like there's maybe 3 or 4. And there's this one dog man. And he said it's just sitting there like a dog, sitting on its hind legs with its front legs kind of straight in front of it, just sat up like a dog would do. And it's just looking at the farmhouse. And he said, he said, not in words, not anything, just a goodbye. No, it wasn't Blue, Janet. I think it was and he thinks it was one of Blue's children. But he said he just got this thought in his head that they were here and they were saying goodbye. And that he said, I'm presuming that the 2 cattle that were taken, maybe that was to sustain them on the travels. I do not know. He said, but that was the last time he ever saw or heard any of them. And he said it was weird the way they'd come. And he said it was as though, he said, I'm presuming that this was now the leader. And again, he said, I couldn't see because it was going dusk, but I think it was one of Blue's sons. He said, I'm presuming that this one had taken over the pack and it was there. And it was basically letting me know we're leaving. So you won't see us again. We're leaving. And he said, and that was it. He said it was a bit of a deflation, actually. And his brothers were there thinking that, there was going to be some epic battle. I was thinking there was going to be some epic battle. And there wasn't. He said it just literally, it ended just so, it was a big letdown, really, And he said that was it. He doesn't know where they went. He never heard anything, never saw anything again, never found any trace of them. There were never footprints, there was nothing. And he said all that he's ever got is, all that he's got of these, basically, that this ever happened were these photographs of his friend Blue. Oh, thank you. Thank you, I was going to say Cole. Thank you, Sid. Yeah, but I must admit, I was let down a little bit because I thought there was going to be this massive battle. And then I was thinking, I don't know about you guys, but I thought, so these pups were his friend, like Blue had been. So why didn't the pups tell their kids that they had to behave themselves around him? I didn't understand that bit. I understand Blue had a very specific bond with him. And then Blue was kind of instilling that in his own children. But I thought, well, if they had a bond with him as well, maybe not quite as tight as Blue, but wouldn't you think that they'd pass it on? So that they could all live in harmony and live in that same territory. Don't know what you guys think, but yeah, that was the only bit that I didn't kind of understand. Could have run out of deer to eat and chose cattle out of desperation, then moved to better hunting grounds. That's yes, Julia. I'm going to highlight that one. Never thought of that. Same as families were all different. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Janet, you are right. Oh, I like that photo of you, Julia. That's a new one, isn't it? I'm feeling sorry for the dogmen. Better for them when they existed in older times when modern society didn't exist. Yes, but did they? Did they exist in older times? Or did, because I'm still not unconvinced that they haven't come through some form of a portal, or that they've been some form of hybridization experimentation, maybe. I don't know. I'm still not I still don't have a hard and fast theory on this. So yeah, I don't know what you all think. But you know, I do think that they have obviously existed in some form or another. Oh, do you, Janet? Thank you. Yeah, we seem to agree on a lot of stuff, Janet, don't we, you and I? Same as like the Ripper stuff. Yeah, so you know, you've got the tales from Orkney and Shetland about the Wolver. You know, that's a, although it's a very benevolent, but that's a similar creature to the dogmen or a werewolf. Then you've got the stories of werewolves. You know, you've got the same stories coming from Scandinavia. So these things have existed, but from where or how? You know, that's why I'm maybe not a government experiment, but I'm thinking, you know, could this have some form of alien involvement, especially if they're coming through portals such as those that exist at Skinwalker Ranch? And we've all heard about those stories, you know, people seeing these wolf-like creatures disappearing into thin air. So, you know, we don't know. We don't know. But I definitely think they do have these different powers. If you remember the story of Brandon, and when he said, you know, he went to shoot that dog man, and he said all of a sudden this wave of the most incredible sadness came over him, and this dog man was, you know, he said all this story, this feeling of like pain and anguish and betrayal and what have you was flooding into him, and he said he just couldn't shoot the gun, and the thing got away, and then once it had gone, he kind of snapped out of it, and it was like it was controlling his thought process. And he said that is how they get away with what they do. He said they manipulate your feelings, and they've got some form of a telepathic ability to manipulate and play with your emotions. Yeah, I think so too. Because like this guy, he said he was kind of able to communicate on a somewhat telepathic level with Blue. Janet, from a different dimension, Skinwalker Ranch has been debunked by a journalist that camped out there. He says it's all hype to make money. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Janet. I think some of it is hype, but then again, look at you know, the stuff with Linda Moulton Howe about the cattle mutilations. I mean, and she is very credible, very, very credible. And also, you know, they do a lot of it about Skinwalker Ranch on Coast to Coast, Coast to Coast AM. If any of you listen to that, and also David Paulides has covered Skinwalker, and these are people that are very credible. What, you don't believe that it's fake, or you don't believe that it is? It's true, Janet. Um, they do seem to have some human aspects. Yeah, I think they do as well, Frida. What did Julia say? Maybe we are the same, messing with our DNA. Yeah, exactly. Look at Eric Van Daniken's theory about human beings, and that he reckons that we were some form of an experiment, an alien experiment. Yes, I think so, Janet, as well. I think it's all real. But Eric Van Daniken was reckoning that this is why a lot of the Genesis stories, he thinks, are actually reflecting what occurred. And if you take Moses and the 40 years in the desert, and he said that 40 years and um, basically what would have been needed to make sure that there were no more impurities being bred into a line of genetically modified humans in order to make them rise above um, the humans that hadn't been genetically modified. So he said basically this isolation in the desert for 40 years is like a giant petri dish. And it's really interesting when you look at his theory about alien involvement and genetic modifications and tampering with DNA. Um, and the same thing goes with, if you look at your rhesus negative blood groups and some of the theories surrounding that. Yeah, they are really interesting, Frida. He's got a channel on here as well. He's got a channel in his native tongue and a channel in English. So yeah, anybody who is interested, look up Eric Van Daniken. He is really, really interesting, and he's got a lot of fantastic theories on ancient aliens. Eric Van Daniken, Green Eyes. I know you've heard of him. So, see, Brian's gone quiet. You owe me money 'cause I finished 2 stories and you didn't think I would. So I hope you all enjoyed both of those little snippets, shall we say. I've actually done that in quite good time because my phone is going flat. So I wasn't sure how long I'd be online, but yeah, 2.5 hours isn't that bad to get both of those stories out, even though they'd be completely different. So, oh yeah, well, I'm going to be shortly after you, Sid. So thank you for coming in. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and please give love to Nancy. There'll be another Dogman episode in the week, but I'm going to keep that for in the week, and that's when I will tell you my little bit of information that I was going to tell you the other night, but I haven't. Yeah, Janet, don't give it away. I was telling these guys the other night about how you had come across an interview that I'd done and you recognised my voice. And I said I was going to tell everybody in here where to find it. However, I'm not at the moment because we got all those arseholes coming in on Friday. I'm not going to make it common knowledge at the moment. So I will let some of you know. I'll give some of you the link privately if you want it. And then thank you, Janet. But yeah, you're the only one who sussed it out. So yeah, so sorry guys, but you can thank Chuffers Trolls for that. They put paid to it. Yeah, it does kind of fly a little bit, doesn't it? I didn't realise I'd been on 2.5 hours, but my phone has gone down. Um, yeah, hang on a minute, I'll have a go at it. I thought you would have heard of him, Green Eyes. All right. Oh God, oh my God, Green Eyes. If you've not heard of him, you are gonna, well, you with your alien fascination, you're gonna love him. He's got a book called Chariot of the Gods. Yeah, Frida, absolutely, she's gonna love it. Um, oh, thank you, Wiccan. I hope you're all right. I'm worried about you with your headache. Um, yeah, he's got. Let me have a think now. It might that might be two K's in his surname. Yeah, Janet, he's brilliant. He's done a lot of different books. Yeah, I thought I knew you had green eyes. Yeah, that's him. He does Return to the Stars. That's another one of his. Oh God, Fried, you'll have to help me out. I've forgotten the names of all his books. I've read that many different things. But yeah, so anybody who is interested, please look him up. Eric van Daniken. He's Dutch. I think isn't he Dutch? I think. But yeah, he's got a channel, two channels on here, and as I said, one's in Dutch and the other is in English. And he's got he does lots of different videos and so on. It might not be right though, Frida, but I think that's it. Oh, it was Von Daniken, not Van Daniken. Thank you, Green Eyes. There you go. Yeah, so as I said, he's got two channels. One of them is foreign to us, and the other one isn't. So hopefully that's the English speaking one. He might even be Dutch. He might be Belgian or something like that. I can't remember. Swiss. Oh yeah, I think he's Swiss, isn't he? That's kind of ringing a bell with me. Either way, he's brilliant. He goes through looking at the construction of different, all the buildings we were talking about the other night. And Janet and I were on about them, and Joe and Green Eyes and what have not Green Eyes. Who was it? Can't remember who it was. Somebody else. But yeah, so he talks about all of those and the cave paintings and the Mahabharata. He goes through everything. He's so interesting. A lot of people try to debunk him. He gets ridiculed a lot, but he's still going after all this time. He's got a massive following. Um, Another person to look up is Linda Moulton Howe. She is a journalist and is she basically covers the all the cattle mutilations, the weird cattle mutilations that go on, and she also covers alien abductions, sightings. Um, she's really, really interesting. So they're two people, Eric Van Daniken and Linda Moulton Howe. And then, of course, the famous David Paulides, my favourite. He does a lot of work, funnily enough, with MUFON, the UFO organization in America. And his latest film is about a Bigfoot connection, a UFO connection with Bigfoot and missing people. Nanite, Julia. I'm gonna be coming off myself soon, so we'll catch you very, very soon. Hopefully, you take care, and I'll see you soon. So, guys and galses, I'm now on 5% on my phone, so I think it's about time that I call it a day too. Thank you very much for coming in and listening. I'm sorry for occasionally yawning, but I am tired. I'm going to do it again. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh, oh. Hopefully that doesn't go contagious and you all start yawning at your end. Anyone who doesn't yawn, you're psychopaths. I watched Luther. I saw that that's how he tries to tell if people are psychopaths or not. Oh, thank you, Janet. Thank you, Green Eyes, and everybody else who's been in, and Frida. So I shall catch up with you all in the week because I've actually got it's quite an interesting. It's a two-parter Dogman story. I'm going to try and condense it into one part. It was very interesting and quite scary. It spooked me out a little bit, and I've not really been able to remember it properly because I got a bit freaky deaky. So I'm gonna that be the next one that I bring to you all, and obviously any updates if I get them on this boat in meals. Bloody hell, what am I on about? That's how people say it, and you're not supposed to. It's not meals, it's Mel's. Incidentally, before I go, that was something I wanted to correct as well. The other night when I was going off on one about bloody Hippo's boyfriend and the fact that somebody wanted a word with him about what he'd call me, and I kept saying Moor Park instead of Turf Moor. Moor Park is a bloody leisure centre. I dropped one of the neighbours off there. It's a leisure centre at Bispham. Don't know what. I think it was because I was aggravated. So I have put a little disclaimer on my in the comments of that live on Friday saying that I do know that Burnley Football Ground is Turf Moor, but for some reason I had Moor Park in my head because that's where he'd been that day. So that was just a little disclaimer. Right. On that note, I'm going to bagger off. So you all take care. Have a lovely evening or day or night wherever you may be in the world. And I shall catch you all in the week for another instalment. So, as always, Bispham Hall, yes, it is, I think. I don't know actually. Oh no, I was thinking of Lytham Hall. Oh, I don't know, Janet. Bispham Hall is, hang on, I'm going to check now. I'm sure Bispham Hall is where they used to go with the brownies and the guides when they had the jamborees. I'm sure that was Bispham. I might be wrong though, but it's ringing a bell with me. I'm going to look it up before I say ta properly. Bispham Hall. Oh, it is still Bispham Hall Scout Estate. Wow. Bispham Hall is a Grade 1 listed Elizabethan country house. Oh no, Bispham Hall's in Billinge. Yeah, same here, Janet. I thought it was over here. It's not. It's in Billinge near Wigan, which is kind of where I grew up after coming down from Scotland. So yeah, and I can't believe that because I was thinking then, oh yeah, we used to go. They called it Bispham Lodge, but yeah, we stayed over at Bispham Hall. But yeah, that's where it is, and it's still standing. It's nowhere near Bispham, near Blackpool. Kids chat, thank you so much. Very interesting live. Thank you very much, Frida, because these wouldn't be interesting. Yeah, I thought as well, because it'd been Bispham, Janet, but obviously it's not. See, we were all brownies and guides. We were good kids. Okay, on that note, I'm buggering off before my phone dies on me. So, in 3, 2, 1, I'm going to say night. May the gods or goddesses bless you, and I will see you all on the bright side.